This video is all about firmware update 1.6.2 for the Canon 1DX Mark III. Does that mean a firmware update is coming for the Canon EOS R5 or R6? Details coming up, but first, I encourage you to subscribe and choose all notifications so you're kept informed on the latest camera gear, news, and rumors. Canon just dropped firmware update 1.6.2 for the Canon 1DX Mark III. The 1DX Mark III was announced in January 2020 as the successor to the 1DX Mark II. While firmware update 1.6.2 doesn't provide any new functionality, it does fix some issues. So it's a little bit disappointing that we don't have any new enhancements for the 1DX Mark III, but with the Canon EOS R1 just around the corner, with an announcement or teaser set to begin in early 2023, it's not really that big of a surprise. So let's get to the fixes for this camera in firmware 1.6.2. If you like to keep your 1DX Mark III connected to your computer for a prolonged period of time, and you got the error code 70, well, that's now been fixed. It also fixes many minor issues. They're so minor, in fact, that even if you look at the release notes, it doesn't say what they are. Normally, Canon is very detailed in the release notes saying what is exactly being fixed. But in this case, error code 70 and a whole bunch of minor fixes that, well, they haven't bothered to list. And yes, I did scan down through the document, as you can see here, and there's no mention of what those minor fixes might be. What is important to note is if you haven't applied previous updates and you go ahead and apply firmware 1.6.2, it's cumulative, so you don't have to worry about applying previous fixes that you might not have. However, as I say with any firmware update, if you absolutely don't need this fix, I'd wait a week or two and see if there are any further issues. Firmware updates can cause cameras to be bricked, as we saw with the Canon EOS R6 back with, I think it was firmware 1.4. And while it did temporarily brick it, you could actually get it working again. You had to pop the battery out, put it back in, and then things would start working again. So what about the Canon EOS R5 and the R6? And you might be thinking, well, what about the R7 and R10 as well? Well, whenever Canon releases a firmware update for the 1DX Mark III, you can usually expect a firmware update for the R5 and the R6. They usually come right around the same time. So I'm not going to talk about the R7 and the R10 other than to say, as far as the rumor mill goes, there's absolutely nothing that we're hearing about for a firmware update for the R7 and the R10. And while we're not hearing about any firmware updates for the Canon EOS R5, there are still a few things that Canon can fix. Firmware update 1.6 for the R5 was a really big update. It allowed us video shooters to be able to shoot unlimited. Well, you still had to worry about the battery, and if you hooked it up to the wall, then basically you could shoot unlimited in up to 96 degrees Fahrenheit, 38 degrees Celsius, 8K RAW, 8K oversample 4K, and 4K 60. Firmware update 1.6 was huge for the R5. It gave us unlimited recording, something that many of us wish we had when the camera was announced back on July the 9th of 2020 and released later on the 30th. That was really good news, but what could we expect to see in a future firmware update? Well, that 30-minute record limit is just getting a little bit ridiculous. The R3, Canon didn't include, well, actually they did. So we do have a record limit in the R3, but it's gone to 6 hours. And the R5C, no record limit. The R7, which costs half the price, no record limit. And the R10, less than $1,000, $979, it doesn't have a record limit either. So it's more than about time to lift that record limit for the Canon EOS R5 and also the Canon EOS R6. And while the R6 hasn't received nearly as many enhancements or feature updates as the Canon R5 has, you're about ready to get a new camera, the R6 Mark II. I suspect that we might get an announcement of this camera somewhere around CP Plus or going forward, and that's in early 2023, around February the 13th or so. From February the 13th up until about April is when we could get an announcement for the Canon R6 Mark II. But unlike the firmware updates that we got for the Canon EOS R5, giving us so many feature enhancements or new capabilities, the R6 Mark II isn't going to be free. So there is a chance we might be getting a firmware update for the Canon EOS R5 and the R6 coming out shortly. It might be a couple of weeks to 4 weeks. What would you like to see in a firmware update for the R5, and what would you like to see in a firmware update for the R6? Let me know in the comments section down below. And if you want to stay up to date on the latest camera news and rumors, whether it be for the R6 Mark II, Sony cameras like the very much anticipated Sony a7R5, or maybe the new S series that we're hoping Lumix will announce in early 2023, well then go ahead and punch that subscribe button, followed by choosing all notifications. And the reason why you want to choose all notifications is as soon as I publish a video like this one here, you'll get notified by let's try that again. You'll get notified by YouTube, so that way you can stay up to date on the latest camera news and rumors. And that saves you from, well, following all the Twitter feeds, all the RSS feeds, following all your favorite websites and YouTube channels. For those days where you just don't have enough time, by subscribing and choosing all notifications, I'll cover all the major camera news and rumors for all the major platforms. But that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again soon.